There's a flaw in your brain, not a small one. A flaw so deep, so invisible, that the smarter you are, the worse it gets. It doesn't matter how educated you are. It doesn't matter how rational you think you are. It doesn't matter how many times you've been wrong before. Right now, in this moment, your brain is actively protecting you from the truth. And the worst part? You can't feel it happening. Think about the last argument you had. With a friend, a partner, a colleague. At some point, you were absolutely certain you were right. Not just probably right. Certain. Now ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you were in an argument and thought, you know what, I might actually be wrong here? Hard to remember, isn't it? That's not a coincidence. That's not stubbornness. That's your brain doing exactly what it was built to do. And today, we're going to take that brain apart. In 2002, psychologists Emily Pronin, Daniel Lin, and Lin Ross conducted a study at Stanford University. They gave participants a list of 24 known cognitive biases. Biases like seeing what you want to see, believing information that confirms what you already think, judging others more harshly than yourself. They asked participants 2 questions. First, how much do these biases affect other people? Second, how much do they affect you? The results were immediate and unanimous. Every single participant rated themselves as significantly less biased than the average person. Not a few people. Everyone. The researchers called this the bias blind spot. The irony is almost unbearable. The very people who scored highest in actual bias testing were the most confident they had no bias at all. Intelligence didn't help. Education didn't help. Self-awareness didn't help. In fact, people who scored highest on tests of analytical thinking showed more bias blind spot, not less. The smarter you are, the better you are at constructing convincing reasons why your conclusions are correct and their conclusions are flawed. Smart people aren't less biased. They're just better at defending their biases. To understand why this happens, we need to go back roughly 200,000 years. Your brain was not built for truth. It was built for survival. In a world where every decision could mean life or death, hesitation was dangerous. Doubt was dangerous. Uncertainty was dangerous. The brain that survived was the brain that committed. That made fast decisions and defended them. That treated its own conclusions as reality. Doubt creates paralysis. Certainty creates action. And in the savannah, action kept you alive. So your brain evolved a system. When you form a belief, any belief, your brain doesn't store it as a hypothesis. It stores it as fact. And then, critically, it builds a defense system around that fact. Psychologists call this motivated reasoning. It works like a lawyer, not like a scientist. A scientist starts with a question and follows evidence wherever it leads. A lawyer starts with a conclusion and finds every possible argument to defend it. Your brain is the world's most sophisticated lawyer, and it works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, completely without your knowledge or consent. Let's make this concrete. In 1979, researchers at Stanford showed 2 groups of students the same set of studies about capital punishment. One group believed capital punishment reduced crime. The other group believed it didn't. Both groups read the exact same evidence. What happened? Both groups came away more convinced of their original position than before. The same evidence made both sides more certain they were right, because each group focused on the flaws in evidence that contradicted them and accepted evidence that confirmed them without question. This is called confirmation bias, and it's not a quirk, it's a feature, but it goes even deeper than that. In the 1950s, psychologist Leon Festinger infiltrated a doomsday cult, a group of people who genuinely believed the world would end on December 21, 1954. They sold their houses, quit their jobs, said goodbye to families. December 21st came. Nothing happened. What did the cult members do? Did they admit they were wrong? No. They became more certain. They announced that their faith had saved the world, that God had seen their devotion and spared humanity, and they went out and tried to recruit more members. Festinger called this cognitive dissonance. When reality contradicts a deeply held belief, The brain doesn't update the belief, it rewrites reality, because the cost of being wrong, when that belief is tied to your identity, is psychologically unbearable. Being wrong about a fact is uncomfortable. Being wrong about something you are feels like annihilation. Here's where it gets personal. The beliefs most protected by your brain are not random opinions. They are the beliefs tied to your identity, your politics, your religion, your worldview, how you see yourself as a parent, a partner, a professional. The more central a belief is to who you are, the more viciously your brain will defend it. And here's what that looks like in practice. Studies show that when people are shown factual corrections to their political beliefs, not opinions, facts, they don't just reject the correction. They often become more committed to the original false belief. This is called the backfire effect. You show someone proof they're wrong, and they dig in deeper. The brain interprets the attack on the belief as an attack on the self, and the self fights back. This is why facts alone never change minds. This is why every political debate in history has ended with both sides more convinced than when they started. This is why the loudest voices in every argument are almost never the most informed. Because the most informed people know how much they don't know. So is there any hope? Actually, yes. In 2016, a remarkable study was published in the journal Science. A team of researchers wanted to know, is it actually possible to change someone's deeply held belief? And if so, how? They worked with canvassers going door to door discussing transgender rights with voters in Florida, one of the most politically charged topics imaginable. One group used standard persuasion techniques, facts, statistics, logical arguments. The other group used a technique called deep canvassing. Instead of presenting arguments, they asked questions. Have you ever felt judged for being different? Have you ever been treated as less than who you are? They asked people to connect with their own experiences of vulnerability. They listened, genuinely listened. They shared their own stories of doubt and uncertainty. The results were stunning. The standard group, facts, statistics, logic, produced almost no change in opinion. The deep canvassing group produced lasting attitude change that held up over 9 months of follow-up surveys. The conclusion: you cannot argue someone out of a belief they argued themselves into, but you can connect them to an experience that makes the belief feel less necessary. Because most beliefs aren't conclusions. They're armor. And armor comes off when people feel safe, not when they feel attacked. There's one more layer to this. In 1999, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger published what became one of the most cited psychology studies of the 21st century. They tested people's competence in logic, grammar, and humor, then asked each person, "How do you think you performed compared to others?" The results were devastating in their clarity. The people who performed in the bottom 25% estimated themselves to be in the top 40%. They weren't lying. They genuinely believed it. Because to know that you're bad at something, you need enough skill to recognize quality in the first place. Incompetence doesn't just produce bad results. It produces the inability to recognize bad results. And on the other end, the people who scored in the top 25% consistently underestimated their performance. They assumed the test was easy for everyone. The Dunning-Kruger effect in one sentence: the less you know, the more certain you are. The more you know, the more you understand how much is unknown. This is why experts speak in probabilities, and why the loudest voices in the room are almost never the most knowledgeable. So here's where we land. Your brain was built to survive, not defying truth. It stores beliefs as facts. It defends identity as if it were physical survival. It rewrites reality before it admits defeat. And the smarter you are, the better it does all of this. This isn't a character flaw. This isn't stupidity. This is the operating system of every human being who has ever lived. Including you, including me, including the scientists who discovered all of this, who are, right now, probably overconfident about something. The only known antidote isn't intelligence. It isn't education. It's a specific kind of intellectual habit that researchers call actively open-minded thinking, treating your own beliefs as hypotheses, actively searching for evidence against what you think, asking, not am I right, but under what conditions would I be wrong? It's not natural. The brain fights it every step of the way, but it's the closest thing to a superpower that psychology has ever documented. Because in a world where everyone is certain, the person who can say, I might be wrong, is the most dangerous thinker in the room. In 1951, Solomon Asch put a group of strangers in a room and asked them a question with an obvious answer. And one by one, they all gave the wrong answer. Not because they were stupid, not because they didn't know better, but because of something even more powerful than the need to be right, the need to belong. That experiment revealed a force so strong, it could override your own eyes, your own certainty, your own mind. It's called the Asch conformity experiment. And that is next.